Hey everyone, welcome to the Open World Warcraft, where we're 100% focused on open world PvE content in the world of Warcraft. Things like leveling, world quest, and delves. My name is Setsuko, and in this video, what I want to do is walk you through the logic and how I go about creating WeakAuras rotation helpers for the builds that I make. Okay, so this video is for those of you who either want to be able to dive in, create your own WeakAuras rotation helper, or you want to be able to modify one that you get from me or from someone else. Now, for those of you who don't know, on my previous channel, Setsuko, I created a lot of different guides and things like that, and on the tail end of that, I started to really get into creating these WeakAuras rotation helpers for the classes, specializations, and builds that I play. That's going to be a big thing that I'll be doing here on this channel, is developing builds for the different classes and specializations as I get to them. And then with most of those, I'm going to develop a WeakAuras rotation helper as well. So if you decide to use those and you want to make some adjustments, or maybe, for example, you're not playing an undead prot warrior, but you're playing a different race and you want to include like that racial in that WeakAuras rotation helper, or you just want to be able to understand and tweak those things, this is the video for you. Okay, so in this video, I'm actually going to walk you through creating the WeakAuras rotation helper for the Protection Warrior build that I'm going to be using for Delve progression once Season 1 launches. So we're going to basically put that together here in the video. So it's going to be a bit of a longer video. It's also going to be a little bit more free form because I really want you to see the process that goes into creating one of these so that you can replicate it yourself. So if that's something that you're into, whether it's just a nerd out and watch it, or whether you want to, learn some things for your own practical use, this is definitely the video for you. Now, quick caveat, this is not a guide to WeakAuras itself. This is a guide to how I put together these rotation helpers. So there may be some WeakAuras things here or there that I don't cover in super detail because that's not the focus of this video. If that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comment section below. All right, before we get started, I am out here at Dornegal, which is the main city in the Isle of Dorne. And I am right here at the entrance. Okay, so if you look right here at the entrance, there are all sorts of training dummies that are available here. You can cleave test on multiple targets. You can heal. You've got 2-target cleave. You got PvE, tanking, etc. There's all kinds of dummies here that you can use to test all your builds and to also test your WeakAuras setups. Okay, so feel free to come out here and use these. I do have the sound effects turned off because if I didn't, you would just hear like all these little NPC soldiers sound effects of fighting like constantly for the whole video, plus whatever other players are doing, like this mage right here. So we're going to work without sound effects here, but we've got our music, and I'm going to be talking quite a bit. So, all right, let's get into this. So where do we start? Well, we're going to start with a build, right? We need to have our talent build in place so that we know how all of our abilities work together and what abilities we have access to. For example, I'm not going to include Thunderous Roar in my rotation here because I don't have that ability, right? And this might be a place where you decide, looking at this build, that you do want to take a couple points out somewhere and put them into Thunderous Roar so that you can grab that ability. And hopefully this video will give you the ability to do that yourself. Okay, so what we're doing here, this is my Protection Warrior Mountain Thane Delve build that I'm going to be using for Delve progression come the launch of Season 1 on September 10th. And we're going to be building out the rotation helper for this. Now, what you're going to see is my rotation helper. So for example, if we come over to this target here, you'll see I've got a little deal there, and you're going to see some rotation helper stuff start to pop up here. This is for the level 70 build that I created. I have not done any updates to this rotation helper since I hit level 80. So basically I made it for level 70 just to help me get through the leveling process, because it doesn't really matter, if you're perfect or spot on at that point. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be updating this for my level 80 build, and not only that, my level 80 Delve build, which is a lot different than my level 80 just go out there and do world quest build. It's got a lot more defensive abilities and utility in here to kind of help with survival and things like that in the higher tier delves. So get your talent build together, get it to where you want it to be, and then we're going to be bouncing back and forth from that to the spell book quite often here. And in your spell book, I would recommend that you uncheck the box to hide passives, just so you can see all your passives and remember that they're there and reference them pretty easily. Now, as we start in these WeakAuras rotation helpers, if you want to get into WeakAuras, you're going to type /WA in the chat. Okay, and then that's going to pop up your different WeakAuras. Now, for what I have going, I have a class category here that I just labeled defensives. You could call this, override, situational, whatever you want to call it here. I'll explain it in a second. And then I have one that's actually for the specialization and build. That is the main rotation. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so when I start to look at these abilities, I group them into two categories. First, there's the damage rotation. These are the abilities that if nothing else is happening, I'm just gonna go through these different abilities to defeat my enemy, right? It's my normal attack, offensive type abilities, buffs and things like that. So, for example, in Prot Warrior here, we have things like Shield Slam, we have Thunderclap, we've got our Revenge, we've got Execute. All these abilities are things that I'm just going to cast when I am fighting different enemies. On the other side, the other group, we've got our defensive, reactions, overrides, situational abilities. These are things that if nothing else happens, if I'm fighting a target dummy, for example, I'm not going to use any of these skills because they don't really contribute to me defeating the enemy. They are there in response to something else that's happening to me, right? So, for example, Pummel. Pummel is the interrupt on Warrior. We don't just mash Pummel for the heck of mashing Pummel, right? Pummel doesn't do any damage. So if we just hit Pummel, it doesn't do anything to the enemy. We use Pummel when the enemy is casting a spell and we want to interrupt it, right? So the enemy has to do something for us to want to use this ability. On the other hand, something like Shield Wall, right? This reduces all damage you take by 40% for 8 seconds. Okay, so Shield Wall, if nothing is damaging us, there's no reason to use Shield Wall because we're not taking any damage. So damage has to be coming in for us to want to use this ability. Another example is Berserker Rage. Okay, this removes and grants immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitate effects for 6 seconds. If there's no fear, sap, or incapacitate effect happening to us or incoming, then we have no reason to push this button, right? So those are kind of the two groups, right? If there's no reason for you to push a button unless there's an external thing that happens, it basically goes into this category. It's the same thing with heals. There's no reason for me to heal myself if I'm not taking damage. So what has to happen? Damage has to be coming in externally to my character, dealing damage to me, and then I will want to heal it back up. So that's the easiest way to think about this. Would I use this ability if nothing else was happening, or do I need something else to happen in order for me to want to use this ability, right? Okay, so I put them into those two groups, and then basically what's going to happen is this first group, which is called Warrior Defensives. This is the one that is the abilities where something has to happen to me for me to want to use this ability. Typically, this is going to be a spell is being cast, damages come in, my health has gotten pretty low. And because these are things that I want to use right away in the right situations, I put these over my character here with a fairly big icon and a pretty nice big glowy border. You can do whatever you want with them. Put them wherever you want, make them as big or as small, etc. I'm just letting you know for the purpose of this video, this is where these are, and that's what types of abilities they are. The next group I have is my Protection Warrior Rotation Specialization grouping here. So what you'll see is right down here, right above my player bar here, my health bar and stuff, is I have this rotation helper here. Now I have it limited to 3. If I jack this up, you'll see there's actually a lot of abilities in here, but I don't want to see all these abilities at the same time, right? I want to keep it limited. Like, what are the top 3 things that I could be doing right now? What are my top 3 choices? So that's why I have it limited to 3. You can change that limit all you want. Okay. So those are the broad categories that we're going to be grouping our abilities into. So I like to start with the defensive abilities and get them out of the way. You'll see I have a bunch of them already in here, but there's more that we're going to need to add. Okay, so if I open this up, we want to take a look in here and we want to go through these abilities and basically just determine whether or not they are abilities that we use situationally, we use as part of our rotation, or we're not really worried about using at all. Okay, so just running through here, for example, Avatar is an ability that we want to use very frequently. It gives us a lot of buffs. Hamstring against a PvE target, I don't really care about, right? It does a little bit of damage and it reduces the movement speed of the target, but I would rather spin that global cooldown, that rage on something else. Shield Slam, core part of our rotation. Battle Shout, that's a buff that lasts an hour, but we want to make sure we have it up on us at all times. Heroic Leap, that's a situational movement ability. Shockwave, okay, this is one that has a situation here where we want to use it potentially to interrupt enemies. We want to use it on multiple targets. It could kind of go either way. So a lot of this different stuff here, we're going to go through and basically figure out what category it's going to be in. I'm not going to go through each one of these abilities for you. I know what they are. I know what they do. I know where they should go. And so we're going to look more at how do we put these into WeakAuras and how do we determine the logic for when we should use them. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to do a check just to see how many abilities we need to add in here. You could do this a couple different ways. You can get an add-on where you can basically keep the windows open without them closing. I just do a quick little screenshot of what I have here. Then I can pull up my paint and then I can just paste this into paint. And then that way I have a quick reference, which is going to be on my other screen over here, just so you know. So then we're going to come back in here and we're going to take a look through. And so what we're going to want here is potentially Shockwave, which I have on there. We're going to want our Impending Victory, which is on there. Stormbolt on there. Bitter Immunity is one we need to add. Intimidating Shout is another one we want to add. So we'll get those in there real quick. So I'm going to go into WeakAuras. I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on my defensives here. And then I'm just going to copy one of these. Okay, so we're just going to duplicate. And then I'm going to title it Bitter Immunity. Okay. And then we'll do this again. And we'll do Intimidating Shout. Don't think I spelled that right. Pretty sure it's got an extra Intimidating Shout. Oh, yeah, I left out the end. Not the end, the N. All right, Intimidating Shout. And then to change these over to the right abilities, pretty much every single WeakAura that you start for the purposes of a rotation helper is going to have the first trigger. We want it to be spell, action usable, and then the spell that we're trying to use. All right, so Bitter Immunity. Okay, and you can see the icon changed there, and it changed here as well. And then over here, we can go to Intimidating Shout. Okay, that's been updated as well, right? And that's good enough. We can just, start right there. Taunt Charge, we want Pummel, which is in there. We're probably going to change Battle Stance to Defensive Stance, so that's going to be in there. And all we're going to do for that is we're going to come in here to Battle Stance, and we'll change this to Defensive Stance. Okay. And then we'll change the name as well. So this will be Defensive Stance. The reason for this is for this particular build, I want to be in Defensive Stance, not Battle Stance. For open world content, I want to be in Battle Stance, not Defensive Stance. So technically what we could do here is we could duplicate this. we can do battle stance, and I'll show you how this makes sense here in a minute. Okay. So we'll have battle stance in there as well, so that way we can have the right one. Now, if you look at it, if I go to defensive stance, it's going to tell me I need to be in battle stance, and vice versa, because we haven't finished out the rotation helper yet. Rallying cry, that's one that we're going to want to add in there. All right, so let's go in. We're going to, again, we'll just duplicate one of these. This will be rallying cry. Okay. And then under action usable, we're going to do rallying cry. Okay. Whirlwind, execute, shield block. We do want shield block in there. Actually, shield block is probably going to be part of our rotation. So we're going to leave shield block out. It's going to go into our rotation instead. We do have challenging shout, but that's an ability that, you know, we're going to use situationally when we feel like it, not necessarily as a result of an external thing. In solo content here, we may not use it at all. We've got revenge, demoralizing shout, shield charge, ignore pain. So ignore pain's on there, shield wall's on there, last stand is on there. So, okay, so looking at that, all of our potentially situational defensive abilities, I'm going to update this actually, and we're going to call this, I'm just going to stick with situational. Okay, so these are going to be our warrior situational abilities here. Okay, cool. So then let's go to our rotation. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to make sure all of our abilities that we need are in here. So again, I'm just going to screen clip this. And just so you can see, I'm just going to throw this right over paint. I'll just make it, you know, big here. And then I'll reference this over here. All right, so we're going to want everything we didn't have before. So we're going to need avatar, which is not in there. Again, there might be a couple of abilities here that we don't necessarily want to use at all. But we're going to go avatar. Okay, and then again, we're going to come into that action usable. We're going to change it to avatar. Okay, what else we got? Shield slams in there. Heroic leap we don't need in there. We just use that, you know, as we're able to. Let's see. Heroic throw we use as able to. Slam we're not going to use. Let's see. Taunt we're not going to use. Charge is in there. Thunderclap is in there. Whirlwind we're not going to use because we're going to use Thunderclap. Execute is in there. Shield block we need to add in. Okay, so we're gonna duplicate. We're gonna do shield block. If I could spell correctly. Sometimes it's hard to type around this microphone. All right, so shield block. Okay. And then over here, we've got revenge in there. We've got demoralizing shout in there. We got shield charge. And that is pretty much it. Okay, so that's all of our abilities in there. Okay, so we've got all of our abilities into WeakAuras. Now, just in case you were interested, if you are not clicked on any of these and you hit new aura, hold on, let me get off of here. What I use is the dynamic groups. Okay, so you can click dynamic group. I'm just going to call it test. And then in here, if you don't have any auras to begin with, what I'm using is an icon. So you just click an icon. Okay, so we would just do ability, come in here, you know, when you get to trigger, you're going to go to spell, you're going to go to action usable, and then type in your spell. So for example, here we could do something like shield slam, right? And then this here, we'll put the icon on there. And what you should do is not change this through the ability. Go back to the group, click on test, go to display, right? And then you can either just drag this around wherever you want it to be, or you can use the positioning here to kind of adjust things here specifically if you want to. And then you can do all your other stuff here as well. Add your glows, change your fonts, all that kind of good stuff. So just in case you don't have anything, that's how you get that started. But if you have at least one, you can generally just copy. So we're going to delete this group in children. So those are gone. Okay. So I like to start with the situational abilities first. The thing that we have to think about here is what is our hierarchy of operations. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're gonna start back here with paint with our setup here. So when it comes to situational abilities, you basically have interrupts. If I could spell here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Interrupts. There we go. Interrupts. You've got heals. You've got damage prevention. And then I would probably say other CC is pretty much other CC and then CC breaks. Okay, so these are the things that you have when you are looking at those situational abilities. I'll make this a little bit bigger here. Let's go up to like 20. Okay. So what we have to ask ourselves is, what is the priority? What's most important? Is it more important to interrupt the spell? Is it more important to heal ourselves? Is it more important to prevent damage? Is it more important to break CC? So generally, the way that I look at this is that what we're going to want to do first is we're going to do CC breaks. If we're crowd controlled, we can't do anything. So CC breaks are the highest priority. The next highest priority to me is to heal yourself, right? Because if you're in a situation where you need healing, you want to keep your health topped off, that's what you want to do. If you die, you're done. If your health runs out, you're done. So heals are the next thing. That's the priority. Then I would say that it would be damage prevention. Then it's going to be interrupts. And then other CC. Okay. So why is this important? This is important because it's going to determine the order in which we place these different abilities for our WeakAuras here. Okay. So the way I set my WeakAuras up is that they go from left to right. Okay, so if you look at this, this group is only showing me one thing. The idea here is that whatever pops up on my character is the absolute most important thing that I could possibly do at that point in time and nothing else. Okay, you could change this and you could set the limit to 3, 4, whatever you want there. But I just want to know, oh crap, if something's up there, it's the number one thing I should be pushing right now. So what this means is that it's going to display the leftmost or topmost item here. If you look at this, you can see that right now we've got Last Stand, Rallying Cry, Bitter Immunity, Intimidating Shout, right? Same thing in the order from top down. So what we want is at the very top is we want the ability that's the most important thing for us to possibly cast in any given situation when all the conditions are correct. That's what we want at the very top. Okay, and then all the way at the very bottom, we want the stuff that doesn't matter as much, but we still want to make sure we have going at the right time. So what this will tell me is right now is the number one ability that I want to hit if all situations are correct is Last Stand. However, that's not necessarily accurate. The most important thing for me to cast is going to be my Berserker Rage to get out of any crowd control that potentially is preventing me from casting Last Stand. But the thing here is Last Stand may be castable in some situations where I am crowd controlled. Who knows, right? So if I could cast Last Stand and I didn't need to use Berserker's Rage, then I might want Last Stand to be first. It just kind of depends. But that's why we come up with this order here. right? CC breaks, heals, damage prevention, interrupts, and other crowd control. Okay, so let's do this. Let's start with our CC interrupts. For me, that's going to be Berserker's Rage, and that's going to be Will of the Forsaken. Okay, Will of the Forsaken is undead specific. It removes charm, fear, and sleep. Okay, and then Berserker's Rage is fear, sap, and incapacitate. So those are my CC breaks. The next thing is going to be heals. So what do I have for heals? I have Last Stand. I have Bitter Immunity. I have Impending Victory. Those are my main abilities here. Also, if you have like a potion or something or a soul stone, you can include those in here as well if you wanted to. Since I'm playing solo and I typically don't have potions on me, which I might start doing for delves, I'm not going to have those in here right at the moment. We do have Rallying Cry, which gives us some temporary and maximum health, but it doesn't actually heal us. So we'll keep that down here. So those are the 3 abilities we have that will heal us. I would say also here, the other thing that we're going to have is going to be long-term buffs. It's probably the other item here. Okay, so the next thing we do is damage prevention. So what do we have for damage prevention? Okay, for damage prevention that we don't already have up here, we do have our shield wall. Okay, we've got our ignore pain. Okay, and that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead. I do not have spell reflection in this build, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Okay, so after our damage prevention is our interrupts. So for our interrupts, we have Pummel, we've got Storm Bolts, we've got Shockwave. I believe Intimidating Shout will work as well, even if it's not necessarily what we actually want to go to. We'll put that up there. And then we have any other crowd control, which we've kind of already covered it because all of these will interrupt the target. And then we have our long-term buffs, right? So Rallying Cry. It's not a long-term buff, but it is a buff that we have. And then we have Battle Shout, Defensive Stance, and Battle Stance. Okay, so this is the group order here. Okay, not necessarily the order we want these abilities in, but we've put them in that hierarchy, right? So we have our CC breaks right here. We've got our heals, these 3. Then we've got our damage prevention right here. We've got our interrupts, all of these. And then we've got our long-term buffs or other buffs that we might want to use situationally. Okay. So we've got these in order. So the next thing to do is to figure out when do we want to cast them. So I actually kind of like to work in reverse order here and start at the bottom. Okay, so we have Battle Stance and we have Defensive Stance. Now, I told you that for this particular build, I want to be in Defensive Stance. There's a bunch of different ways that you could set this up. I'm going to show you the way that I am going to set this up. Okay, I do not take Bitter Immunity unless I'm playing this build. So an easy thing for me to do is I can go to Battle Stance. I can go to Trigger. So what I have here is Aura, Player Buff, Battle Stance. So this is basically saying, if you don't have Battle Stance, then tell me to cast Battle Stance. If you do have Battle Stance, then it doesn't show at all. What I'm going to add in here is an additional requirement, add Trigger. Okay. And then we can do Spell. Okay. And then we can do Spell Known. We can do Bitter Immunity. Hit OK. And then we're going to do Inverse. So what this means is the opposite. Okay, this means if Bitter Immunity is not known, then tell me to use Battle Stance. Now in this case with this build, Bitter Immunity is known, so it should go away. Right? If I switch to Battle Stance, this is going to tell me, hey, you need to be in Defensive Stance. And what I can do to make sure that Defensive Stance doesn't come up when I have a different build is I can go to Defensive Stance, add a trigger. I can go Spell, Known, and the same thing. I'm going to do Bitter Immunity. and I'm not going to click inverse, right? So this will only show if I also know bitter immunity. So let's take a look. It says I'm in defensive, I need defensive stance. If we switch over to this build, and you'll notice I do not have bitter immunity, right? So let's apply. And what's going to happen is this defensive stance notification is going to go away. But if I'm not in battle stance, then battle stance will pop up and tell me to switch to that. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's go ahead and get back to our build, and you'll see it's going to tell me to go into defensive stance. Right there. Now you can do that a bunch of different ways. You could tie it to a different ability. There's lots of different things you can do there, but for me, that's kind of the easiest one. If you took bitter immunity in every build, then this obviously would not work, but I don't. I only take it in this particular build. Okay. The next thing is Battle Shout. So Battle Shout, super simple. Any type of buff you want to look for, do I have an aura? Okay. And so here this is aura, player buff, Battle Shout. And if it's missing, then it will tell me to cast Battle Shout. Right. So if I get rid of Battle Shout, it's going to tell me, hey, cast it. Once I cast it, it's going to go away. So generally with buffs, that's the easiest thing to do. Do I have the aura? Yes, no, maybe. Now, Rallying Cry, I'm not 100% sure what I want to do here with Rallying Cry, so I'm gonna circle back to Rallying Cry here in just a bit. Okay. All right, so once we get into the next group, this group here, from Pummel to Intimidating Shout. Okay, this is our interrupts / other CC. So what we want to do here is we want to figure out what is the most important ability for us to cast if possible. And so typically what I will do here is I will do these in a sort of if this then that format. Basically at any given moment, if I have Pummel available, that's what I want to use to interrupt the enemy. Right? Because Pummel is available a lot. It has a short 14-second cooldown. All it does is interrupt. Stormbolt stuns. Shockwave stuns. Our Intimidating Shout, that is going to cause enemies to cower in fear. They all do something extra that I would rather use them for that, but the byproduct of stunning and the byproduct of causing enemies to cower in fear is that it will also interrupt their spell casts. So here's what we do. Pummel. When Pummel is usable, again, this is going to be the setup for like every single thing here. If you can't use Pummel, this won't show and it won't tell you to use Pummel. That covers all kinds of stuff. If the ability is on cooldown, it goes away. If you magically get a free charge or something, or the cooldown gets ended early, it pops up. It covers pretty much everything. But the additional condition we want to set here on Pummel is that we want it to be, we're going to do player unit info, cast, target. So what this says is this says, if the target is casting a spell, then we would use trigger, or then we would use Pummel. Okay, so if the target's casting a spell and Pummel is usable, tell me to use Pummel. However, we want to add an extra check mark here under interruptible. Okay, so what this means is that it's not going to tell us to use Pummel on a cast that the enemy's casting that we can't actually interrupt. So that's super important. And that's easy. Pummel is easy. We just put it on there and say, hey, if the enemy's casting a spell and I can interrupt it, tell me to use Pummel. Okay, so here's the next thing. After that, we want to look. We have Stormbolt, Shockwave, and Intimidating Shout. We want to think about two things here. Which abilities have more value as a non-interrupt, right? And which ones have the longest cooldowns? So if we look at Stormbolt, it's a 38-second cooldown. It does some damage, and it will hit your primary target, stun them for 4 seconds, and hit 2 additional targets, stunning them for 2 seconds. Okay? Shockwave has a 40-second cooldown, so really it's about the same as Stormbolt. This does a damage ability in a cone and stuns all enemies for 2 seconds. So AoE stun. And then Intimidating Shout has a 1.5 minute cooldown, causes the target to cower in fear, makes them disoriented for 15 seconds. So when we look at this, the way I see this is Stormbolt, pretty low cooldown, does a big stun on one target, and then a couple other targets get a minor stun. Okay? Shockwave, big stun to a ton of enemies. Intimidating Shout, long CC on a long cooldown. So what I'm asking myself here is, if Pummel is on cooldown and the enemy is casting a spell, what is the next ability that I would use to interrupt a cast? Which one has the least additional benefit outside of that interrupt? To me, that's going to be Stormbolt, right? I would rather use Shockwave on a group of like 8 people. I don't necessarily want to use Shockwave to interrupt one cast for one enemy, but I could if I wanted to. I don't want to just randomly use Intimidating Shout to interrupt one enemy because I want to use it on a large group. So what that tells me is that if for some reason Pummel is on cooldown, I want to use Stormbolt to interrupt the enemy. So what does this mean? This means when I come into Stormbolt, I'm going to do action usable Stormbolt. I'm going to do the same cast setup. The target is casting something that's interruptible, but then I'm going to add this spell action usable Pummel inverse. Remember, inverse is not this. So only show me Stormbolt when someone's casting a spell that's interruptible and Pummel is on cooldown. Now it's up to you. You can keep going from there if you want, but what I find is generally between 2 interrupt abilities, if they have a pretty short cooldown for one and a relatively short cooldown for the other, that's all that you really need. But if you wanted to, you could keep going. You could say Shockwave, usable. There's a cast that's interruptible, but Pummel's not usable and Stormbolt's not usable. That's up to you. Me, I'm probably going to end up tweaking these for the delves. So we'll come back to these along with Rallying Cry. But that's how we set up the interrupts. Your primary interrupt is just somebody's casting a spell like an interrupt. Cool. Your secondary one is the same thing, but your primary one is not available. That makes sense? Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to come back to Shockwave and Intimidating Shout and Rallying Cry a little bit later here because we need to figure these out. All right, the next thing we have is our damage prevention. Okay, our damage prevention here, we've got Shield Wall and Ignore Pain. So a couple things here. Shield Wall has 2 charges, 2.4 minute recharge, reduces damage you take by 40% for 8 seconds. Okay, then we also have Ignore Pain. Ignore Pain takes some rage and it ignores 50% of damage taken up to 1.7 million total prevented. This is something we can use at any point in time, whereas Shield Wall is something we have on a cooldown. So what does that tell me? That tells me that generally speaking, Shield Wall is going to be a little bit of a better ability, and so we're going to want to have it closer to the top than Ignore Pain. We're going to want to prioritize Shield Wall over Ignore Pain, right? So we got those in order. Now the next thing we're going to do is look at our HP or our healing abilities as well. So in terms of order, I like to group all these together, right? So we have Impending Victory. Impending Victory is going to be our ability here that's going to heal us for 20% of our maximum health. We get a reset for this when we kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, right? Which is going to be most of the time. We have Bitter Immunity. This is a 3-minute cooldown ability that restores 20% health and removes all disease, poisons, and curses affecting you. And then we have Last Stand, which Last Stand is going to increase your maximum health by 30% and heal you for that amount as well. Okay. So it's going to increase you by, heal you by 30% of your maximum health. Okay, so those are the abilities we have to prevent damage. So how do we want to look at these? Well, we want to set these up based on the conditions that we really want to use these abilities in. So Impending Victory, we're going to use all the time. Bitter Immunity, it is a 20% health heal, but it also has the addition of removing diseases, poisons, and curses affecting you. And then Last Stand, I basically treat it as a 30% heal as well. Okay. And the other thing here is I believe we can combo Last Stand with our Rallying Cry to get a bit of a bigger heal potentially, and that might be the way that we set it up, is that we do Rallying Cry into Last Stand for a bit of a bigger heal. Okay, so we want to look at these all together, okay, and determine when do we want to use these. Okay, so for me, the priority whenever possible is to always use Impending Victory. Okay, Impending Victory, it does have a 25-second cooldown. It heals us for 20% of our maximum health, but it can get reset every time we kill an enemy. So what this means is we can actually use this ability a lot. If we pull 5 things, we use Impending Victory, kill 1, use Impending Victory, kill 1, use Impending Victory, kill 1. That's way more times than we can use Last Stand or Shield Wall or any of this stuff. So whenever possible, we want to prioritize Impending Victory. So what we're going to do here is when Impending Victory is usable, we want to use it. And we want to use it, I would say, when our health percent is less than or equal to 75%. Okay, so what this means is this will heal us for 20% of our health. We're going to wait till we get down to 75%, then we just use Impending Victory. A couple reasons for this. One, we use it at 75% because we know we'll get the full heal from it, even if we have some other passive healing going on, maybe from our talent tree. Two, we'll have used it so that if for some reason we don't get the cooldown reset, it's gone on cooldown fairly early and we'll have it back to possibly use it a second time. So generally with Impending Victory, what's going to happen here is this is an ability where if you're fighting a bunch of targets, you get to use it over and over and over again. If you're fighting one target, you don't, because you don't get the reset. So it's better to take some damage and use Impending Victory and then have it go on cooldown so that maybe when you get the enemy down to 30% health, you can use Impending Victory again because the cooldown will have ended. So we want to make sure we give ourselves a little bit of buffer so that any passive healing doesn't cause us to overheal with our Impending Victory. You could even drop this down to like 70% if you wanted to. But there's another situation where we just want to use Impending Victory anyway, and that's if the target is about to die, because we get a free reset. So even if we're at 90% health, if the enemy's about to die and we have Impending Victory available, we should use it to heal for 10%, because then it's going to reset right away, and we'll be able to use it again on the next enemy if our health gets to 75%. Or if that enemy drops down and is about to die, we can use it again and heal for another 10%. So basically, those are the scenarios we want to use Impending Victory in. Have we taken enough damage that we get the full heal, or is the enemy about to die so we get the free reset? So what we do here is we add an additional trigger that says the health of the target is less than 20%. Because if it's less than 20%, we're probably going to get a free reset pretty easily here. Okay. Now, this is either or. So when you're looking at your triggers, there's a little something extra you have to do here. So for example, if we go down to Pummel, this says all triggers are required for activation. That means you could put trigger 1 and trigger 2. You could put an and in between there. Pummel has to be usable and the enemy has to be casting an interruptible cast. For Impending Victory needs to be usable, but then either and this or and this. Okay? Impending Victory has to be usable and our health has to be 75% or less, or Impending Victory has to be usable and the target's health needs to be less than 20%. If you look at the drop downs, it's either any, all, or custom. All means when any of these happen, okay, when any of these happen, this will cast. Okay. Our all means when all of these are true, it will tell you to use this ability. Any means when any of these are true, it will tell you to use the ability. We don't want either one of those in the case of impending victory. We don't want any of these, because then if our health is below 75%, but impending victory is on cooldown, it's still going to tell us to use impending victory. So what we have to do here is we have to do a custom function. These are pretty easy to do, okay? So they start with function trigger, and then they go return, and then you type whatever it is that you actually want it to be here, and then you do end, okay? So what I have here is return trigger 1, okay? So action usable has to be true, and then in parentheses, trigger 2 or trigger 3. So what this says is you have to return trigger 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. If either of those are true, then it will show you this ability. That's a little complicated getting into the WeakAuras here, but basically in any of these situations, you can just copy this here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for impending victory. So next, what's the next thing that we want to use? Well, to me, it's probably going to be our bitter immunity or our shield wall, right? So let's say that we hit 75%, we use impending victory, we get back up to 90%, and then we're back down to 75% and impending victory is not available. What do we want to do there? Well, we have the option to either use bitter immunity to boost ourselves back up, or we have the ability to use like shield wall to maybe reduce some damage. I would prefer to use shield wall first because we have 2 charges of shield wall. It'll reduce damage that we take by 40%, and then maybe we'll kill the enemy, we'll get a reset, and be able to use impending victory again, something like that, rather than going straight to bitter immunity and using a 3-minute cooldown on 20% health, especially when it removes all these extra things here. So to me, the next thing that we would potentially cast would be shield wall. And so we're going to move shield wall up. Actually, we're going to keep it where it is. So shield wall, we want action to be usable. Okay. Then we also want to add a trigger here. We want to say spell, action usable, impending victory, and then we want to do inverse. So tell us to use this when we don't have impending victory, and we want our health. Let's see, we're going to have our health be 70% or less. Okay. And what we could actually do here, if we wanted to, instead of action usable on impending victory, we could do charge, cooldown charge count. So we can do remaining time is greater than or equal to, let's say 5 seconds. Okay. So what this means is that if we can use this ability and impending victory is on cooldown with more than 5 seconds remaining and our health is 70% or less, which we'll change this to 75 actually, go ahead and cast shield wall. Okay. And then one additional thing I like to add in here for shield wall potentially would be something like, and the enemy's health is greater than, 25% or 30% or something like that. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to use shield wall against the enemy that's about to die, because then we just waste the charge here. The other thing here that we might want to do is we might want to add a trigger or a player buff. Okay, and this will be shield wall. And then we want to do aura missing. Okay, so what does this do? This tells us not to cast Shield Wall if we already have Shield Wall. That's important because Shield Wall has 2 charges, and we don't want to cast Shield Wall while we already have it. So there's a lot going on here in this thing, but this is how you put together the logic to create these rotation helpers, right? Okay, you got to think, like, what do I want to prioritize? You could say that even if you use Impending Victory, you want to use Shield Wall on top of that, because Shield Wall isn't necessarily in conflict with Impending Victory because it's reducing damage, right? So you could say, you know, at the start of the fight, just cast Shield Wall. Why not? Get the 40% damage reduction. That might be something that you want to do. I typically don't play that way because I want to use my easily resettable stuff, you know, right away. I don't want to cast Shield Wall in a situation where I'm fighting one open world content enemy, right? There's no reason for me to do that, because either I'm going to beat that enemy and then just Impending Victory to heal myself, or I'll heal up between enemies, etc. So that's why I do a little bit of a buffer here. So Shield Wall is usable. The cooldown on Impending Victory is greater than 5 seconds. Our health is 75% or less. And we don't already have Shield Wall. Makes sense? Okay. This is probably a good point for me to also add that there is no point in any of this process where you don't need to go out and test it, figure out what's weird or what doesn't actually fit the way that you think that it should, and to go back and tweak it, right? All this right now is like theoretical, doing the best we can, but we'll go out and we'll test it, and then we'll see how it holds up. Okay, so that's Impending Victory and Shield Wall. Next thing is Ignore Pain, right? So Ignore Pain is going to reduce damage that you've taken up to 1.7 million total prevented, which means you have to take about 3.2 million, 3.4 million, 3.4, about 3.5 million damage, and it's going to ignore 1.7 million of that, right? So when we look at that, one, Ignore Pain is not the thing that I want to be spending my rage on if possible. I would rather use Impending Victory, Shield Wall, and Bitter Immunity before I get to Ignore Pain, right? But if I have to use Ignore Pain, then I want to make sure that I'm using it at a point where it's going to help me to stay alive. So what I want to do here is I want to switch to Ignore Pain when my health gets relatively low, right? And maybe it's that I want to sneak in and Ignore Pain before I get to the point where I have to use Bitter Immunity, potentially, right? Maybe I just want to kind of slap one in there like Shield Wall, Impending Victory, Last Stand. This stuff hasn't got me to where I want to be, so then I want to Ignore Pain. So what I'm going to do here is action usable, Ignore Pain. Okay, we're going to add one here. Aura player buff. We're going to do Ignore Pain. Okay, and is missing. Right, so I don't want it to keep telling me to cast Ignore Pain every single time I can if I already have Ignore Pain, right? So that's the first thing we're going to do there. And then we're going to do this, let's say when our health hits, let's say like 40%, right? We're kind of in panic mode. At 40% of our health, let's see. We have about 6 mil here. So 40% of our health, yeah, we're going to be around 2.5. We might want to bump this up. Let's do 50%. Okay, we'll do 50% health. Okay, so basically if this is usable and we don't already have it and we're at 50% health, we'll cast it Ignore Pain to prevent some of the damage while we do something else. Okay, that something else is probably going to be Bitter Immunity or Last Stand. So Last Stand has a 2-minute cooldown, which is not as long as Shield Wall, but Shield Wall has those additional charges, so you could think of it as a 1.2 minute sort of cooldown on Shield Wall, which is why we'll use it a little bit more frequently. But Last Stand is a pretty good go-to, and I would say that if we've used Ignore Pain, then we probably want to follow that up with a Last Stand. So we're going to prevent some damage and then boost our health back up, right? So we're going to do Last Stand, usable. Okay, and then we're going to do our health percentage. Let's say that our health, I like 40%. So what this is going to do is we've cast Ignore Pain. If that doesn't get us to keep our health above 50%, right? So if we're not passively healing, if we haven't hit Impending Victory or Shield Wall or something like that to help boost us back up, we're going to hit Last Stand. That's going to heal us for 30% of our health, get us back into range. And make it so that we can hopefully delay to our other defensive abilities here. And I think that's fine, right? So then we have Bitter Immunity. So Bitter Immunity, we're going to do Action Usable, Bitter Immunity. We're going to do our health percentage here. And I think what we want to do with this is we really only want to use this in situations where either our health is low, in general, like we've used everything else that we could possibly use, and now we'll use this because it's on a 3-minute cooldown, or we just want to use it when our health is at a certain percentage and we have something that we want to cleanse, right? And maybe that's not correct. Maybe we want to use this as much as possible because it has a longer cooldown. I think maybe we actually want to do that instead. We just want to use this. I would say we prioritize this over Ignore Pain. So Shield Wall is going to tap in at 75%. Ignore Pain is going to tap in at 50%. I would say Bitter Immunity, we could tap into that at like 60% HP. Okay, so what we'll do here is we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to add Spell, Action Usable. This is going to be Impending Victory. Okay. Actually, we're going to do the cooldown charges, remaining time greater than equal to 5, which is the same thing we have on Shield Wall. Yep. And that should be fine, because if we pop Shield Wall, then we'll still heal ourselves with Bitter Immunity if Impending Victory is still not available. Okay, then we'll do Ignore Pain, then we'll do Last Stand to boost ourselves up. And really, you know, that's 40% health. We don't really want to get any lower than that anyway. So that's all of our healing and defensive stuff in there. So the priority is to hit Impending Victory if it's available, then Shield Wall, then Bitter Immunity, then Ignore Pain, then Last Stand. So really what you do here is you put these in reverse order. So Last Stand, Ignore Pain, Shield Wall, Bitter Immunity, Shield Wall, Impending Victory. So this means that if any situation Last Stand is the #1 thing that you need to use, then it will be right here on top. Okay. And then for these crowd controls here, crowd control escape, if we look at Berserker Rage, so we want Action Usable. Okay. And then we want crowd control. So I have on here Fear mechanic. This is Fear, Sap, Incapacitate. So we could do Fear. Yeah, you would have to look these up specifically. I just have this on Fear mechanic right now, because I'm not technically sure which ones Fear, Sap, Incapacitate. It's probably Pacify, I would say. So we might actually have to look this one up. So we'll come back to these, but basically what you want to do here is just set these to the right mechanic. So right here I have just crowd control specifically, but we could do specific type, charm. So we know this is charm, fear, and sleep. So we don't have sleep, but that's probably pacify, and then fear. So let's duplicate. Okay. So charm, fear. And then we could do pacify, right? And then so basically we want it to be action usable and any of these, right? So we can come back to our impending victory. We can copy this function, come back up here to Will of the Forsaken. We're going to do custom function here. So function trigger return trigger 1, and we want trigger 2 or trigger 3 or trigger 4. Okay, so what that means is as long as Will of the Forsaken is usable and we are either charmed, feared, or asleep, pacified, then it will tell us to use this ability. Okay, we would do the same thing for Berserker's Rage, exact same thing, except we would do fear, sap, and incapacitate, right? And we can actually change fear to fear mechanic. And then we'll be good there. I would just have to look up exactly what sap. I think sap and incapacitate, right? So we have fear mechanic. And then I believe if we do crowd control, and this is one where you just got to go out and test it. We would do pacify. Right? Because if we're sapped or incapacitated, then we're pacified. I believe that should be correct. It might be stun. I'm not specifically sure here. And then what we would do is we'll come back over here. And for this one, actually, we can just straight up copy this. Okay. And then we'll come to Berserker Rage. Go to our trigger. Custom function. All right. Function trigger return 1 and 2 or 3. The other thing with Will of the Forsaken, Berserker's Rage, there is some overlap on fear. But I think it's okay. So basically what we do here is because Berserker's Rage is above Will of the Forsaken, if we're feared, technically this will tell us that we can use both. But because we show one icon, it'll show Berserker's Rage, which has a 1-minute cooldown versus Will of the Forsaken's 2-minute cooldown. So we should be good on that one. So we have Shockwave, Intimidating Shout, and Rallying Cry left here. And these, again, we can just kind of take a look at these. I think Rallying Cry, the Rallying Cry Last Stand combo is something I might potentially want to do here. But for right now, what I want to do is I want to go test this and kind of show you what's going on here. So let's see if we can come over to a tanking dummy. Okay. All right, it's going to start hitting us back. All right, and we should see popping up here when we hit 75% or so health, cast Impending Victory. Okay. Impending Victory is on cooldown, so use Shield Wall. Okay. Our health is going to keep going down. You'll use Shield Wall again. All right, this is telling us go ahead and use Ignore Pain, use your Bitter Immunity. Okay, health keeps going down. There we go. We got our Impending Victory back again. Okay, we're going to use our Ignore Pain. Health keeps going down. Use Last Stand. Okay, use Ignore Pain again. Okay, use Ignore Pain. This is telling us to use our Interrupt. This is because they have the same conditions as the previous stuff that we had, so you can just ignore those. But we're back to our Impending Victory here. Okay. Use our Ignore Pain. Use our Ignore Pain again. It's doing quite a bit of damage to us. Ignore Pain again. And we're dead. But you see, we lasted a really long time there, and had we been proactively using our offensive abilities, had we had a healer, you know, et cetera, we're not going to be going up against an invincible training dummy in actual combat. But you see how long that kept us going, right? So the thing to do is go test that in actual content and then come back and figure out, like, okay, do I need to tweak something? Do I need to change a health percentage? Do I actually want to use this at this different time? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, you know, for the duration we lasted just standing there literally doing nothing, that was pretty good. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and boost ourselves back up. So we got our defensives in place there and our reactions. And again, like we would have had some interrupts and some different things going on there. And again, you could ignore intimidating shout and rallying cry in that particular scenario. We copied the WeakAuras, so it has like that trigger, action usable, health thing going on. Now I do think I like the idea of comboing rallying cry into last stand here potentially. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna go action usable, rallying cry. Okay. And then what we want is to use this right before we use last stand. Last stand is when our health hits 40%. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add in, let's see, spell. And let's say that the cooldown on this is less than or equal to like 5 seconds. That way, if for some reason, you know, we've got a little overlap here, that'll make sense. And this is going to be last resort, or sorry, last stand. This is not Papa Roach. Last stand, right? And we're going to add that player info health, player health percent is less than or equal to 40. Okay. So let's give this a shot. All right, so we're going to come back to the normal tank dummy. I'm not going to let it kill me this time. All right, we're going to use our abilities here. And I'm clicking just for convenience. All right, impending victory, boost us back up. Next thing here should be our shield wall. Yep, so there's our shield wall. Our health's going to keep ticking down. We're going to use bitter immunity. Keeps ticking down. Okay, it's going to have us do this into impending victory, into shield wall. Keep going down. All right, and then it didn't do the last stand, okay, so let's change this to spell, action usable, last stand, and see if that makes a difference. Okay, so let's come over here. All right. Okay, there we go. So we got this into last stand, into ignore pain, ignore pain again, impending victory. Okay, and we're back up. Cool. All right, so that does do what we want it to do. One thing I noticed there was ignore pain popping up like a lot, but I think that's okay. Health below 50%. Yeah, that makes sense to me. We can leave it there. I'm not sure about the bitter immunity trigger. I think I actually want that to be above ignore pain. Like I'd rather heal myself than keep casting ignore pain over and over and over again. Right? I think that makes sense. I want ignore pain to kind of be the last thing that I potentially do here because all these other things could help me to recover. So let's try that order. Okay. All right, so then we have Shockwave, Intimidating Shout, and Battle. Shockwave and Intimidating Shout here. So Shockwave, I don't necessarily want to use it as a stun, but I can use it as a last resort stun. So what we can do here is we can say Shockwave's usable. There's an interruptible cast, and then also Pummel's not usable. And Stormbolt's not usable. That's good enough. Any situation outside of that, I'm just going to cast it when I look on the screen and I'm like, this is a good time to use Shockwave, right? So that's when I will cast Shockwave. So for me, Shockwave is an ability that doesn't necessarily fit into the WeakAuras rotation helper in any particular scenario, because you want to use it in a specific scenario where there's multiple targets. And honestly, with WeakAuras, it's really hard to tell WeakAuras to go, hey, look around and there's 5 people, so let me cast the ability. You can do it, but it's above the level of WeakAuras I want to get into. And if you're watching this video, probably above the level that you want to get into. So I'd rather just look on my screen and go, yeah, it's a good time to cast Shockwave. So I'm going to do that. So we'll put that there. And then Intimidating Shout. Honestly, I don't even know if I want this in the WeakAuras helper. I think I just want to use this as I need it. So I might actually just pull it down as a situational ability that I use sometimes. Okay. And so we're going to go ahead and, I don't know why I have some of these abilities on here. We're going to pull Rallying Cry up here. We'll pull Bitter Immunity down here. Okay, so I think I'm actually just going to take Intimidating Shout out and just use that situationally when I need to. So these are the situational abilities here. We'll show these in actual combat at the end here. We'll go do a delve or something like that with these, but that basically is going to put us into these situations here with these. Now, the other thing that we do want to check is we want to make sure that we don't have any passives that are going to influence when we use these abilities, right? Okay, so critical block, parry and crit, stamina, devastator. So pretty much nothing here would influence the way that we do those. And then also we would want to check in our talents here for any of these abilities. So we would do like Ignore Pain. Okay. And we would see we've got Ignore Pain here, right here. 10% of the damage you deal adds to your active Ignore Pain. And then right here, consuming 30 rage grants a stack of Seeing Red, which transforms at 8 stacks into Violent Outburst, causing your next Shield Slam or Thunderclap to deal 200% increased damage, generate 100% more rage, and grant Ignore Pain. So we will get this if we don't have Violent Outburst. So we might actually want to include, okay, in WeakAuras, we go to Ignore Pain. We're going to add a trigger, play or buff. Okay. And I already forgot the name of it. Violent Outburst, I think. That doesn't look right. Yeah, Violent Outburst. Okay, Violent Outburst. And then missing, right? Because if we have that, it's going to give us an Ignore Pain anyway. So we don't want to cast Ignore Pain. We'll have to check this and make sure. Actually, what we can do here, I've got an add-on that will let me copy the spell ID. And then we can paste that into WeakAuras here. So let's try, see if this works. Yeah, Violent Outburst. Cool. All right. So that's Ignore Pain. Then we would come in and we'd check for the next one. So this is going to be Last Stand. All right, so as of right now, Last Stand's cooldown's reduced and it grants you Shield Block. So we'll want to keep that in mind when we look at Shield Block. Okay. Then we have Shield Wall. Okay, so right here, we've got 1 additional charge, cooldown reduced by 60 seconds. We've got the cooldown reduced, and then we've just got the basic ability here. Okay, Ignore Pain, Last Stand, Shield Wall. Bitter Immunity is just its own thing. We don't get anything extra from that. Okay, and then Impending Victory. So right here, we've got Impending Victory, increases your max health by 10% for 5 seconds, and then you heal for any amount of the original Impending Victory that healed you in excess of full health. That's fine. Okay. And then we have our interrupts, right? So we have our Pummel, which we've got cooldown reduction here. We've got our Stormbolt, which again, right here in this choice talent, we're getting that additional stun, but the cooldown's been increased a little bit, which is fine. And then we also have our Menace for Intimidating Shout, so it'll knock back targets and cause them to cower in fear instead of fleeing. And then also we have our Shockwave. Okay, so range increased. When it hits 3 targets, cooldowns reduced by 15 seconds. Okay. And then down here, Avatar increases the damage of Thunderclap and Shockwave by 50%. All right, so basically we've done all of our checks here. We made our one modification to our Ignore Pain, so that if we do have that one aura, we don't cast it because we're going to get it anyway. And that would be our defensives set up that way. Now, it takes a lot to get all this stuff set up and to work through the logic of things here, but once it's set up like that, then you're pretty much good to go. And honestly, I find that a lot of times this portion is harder to set up than the actual damage rotation itself. So that's what we're going to get into next. We're going to get into the actual rotation. You can see we have a lot fewer abilities here. And these, generally, you're just going to, group them in whatever manner makes sense to you, right? So what I do is normally I put my spammy ability at the bottom, and then I go up in order of abilities that I want to use based on cooldown. Now, for this particular group, I am showing the next 3 items that are here, so that I have some choices, right? I just don't want to be told, like, do this ability next for sure. I want to have everything in here. So we're going to go through this one a little bit faster here. I'm going to show you some of the specific things that go into play here, but for the most part, this is going to be more about looking at like the talent passives and stuff like that than anything else. Okay, so first, a quick sort of weird thing here, shield charge and charge. Okay, so shield charge is an engage ability here that I have. It's got a 45-second cooldown, but it does a lot. It does a ton of damage. It does AoE damage. It stuns the target. It generates rage. Pretty much any time I possibly can, I want a shield charge if it's available. I can also use it to engage in between groups. So shield charge is my #1 ability that I want to cast if I have it available, because it does so much. And specifically, I want to be able to cast this to engage the enemy. So a couple things here on the trigger. Action usable, but then I'm also doing a range check. You'll notice that shield charge has a 25-yard range. I don't want it to tell me to charge to a target that's 40 yards away from me, because it will. If shield charge is usable, right, and you have a target selected way over here, it'll tell you to use shield charge, even though you actually can't because the target's not in range. So you can do player unit info, range check, target distance, less than or equal to 25, right? And that will make sure that you're shield charging in range. You have to tweak this a little bit sometimes, like the 25's not exactly lined up with the yards, so you might have to go 27 or 23 or, tweak it a little bit in practice. The next thing I have is if I don't have shield charge, I want to use charge to get from target to target. So first, charge has to be usable. Shield charge is not usable. And then I do a range check for charge, because charge is different. It has an 8 to 25 yard range. So I have to do a check to make sure that the distance is less than 25, less than or equal to 25. And then also that the distance is greater than 8. So it's within that range. Okay, so that's pretty easy. These are pretty straightforward. The interesting thing there is just adding in the range check. The next thing for me is I want to use Demoralizing Shout anytime it's available, because it is going to reduce the damage that enemies deal to me. It's going to generate rage, and it's also going to increase the damage I deal to enemies. So if we do Demoralizing Shout, okay, you're going to see it reduces the damage enemies deal to you by additional 5%. Over here, we've got the ability right here. We've got the radius increased. And right here, generates 30 rage and increases damage dealt to effective targets by 20%. Okay, so a couple things that I need to add here on Demoralizing Shout that I don't have. One, the action is usable. Second, we want to do player unit info. We want to do power, player, power type, rage, okay? And then we want to add power less than or equal to, and we want to make sure we get the full benefit, so we want to do 100. Or we could even put like 95. We don't want to waste the rage that we get from Demoralizing Shout, so we want to make sure that we don't overcap on our rage. So that says if we have 120 rage, don't use Demoralizing Shout because we're going to waste 20 of the 30 rage that Demoralizing Shout gives us. The other thing that I want to add in here is player unit info, health of the target, and I want the health percent to be, let's see, this lasts for 8 seconds, so I would say I want the health of the target to be greater than like 40%. Okay. So if we can use Demoralizing Shout and we're going to get all the rage and the target's going to be alive long enough for Demoralizing Shout to matter, tell us to cast Demoralizing Shout. Okay, so that's Demoralizing Shout. The next big buff we have is Avatar. It's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. So double Demoralizing Shout. Okay. And this is going to do a number of things. So it's going to increase the damage we deal. It's going to remove all roots and snares. We don't really care about that. We care about the increased damage, but we're also getting a lot of other buffs from Avatar. Okay, so right here, it's going to increase the damage of Thunderclap and Shockwave and reduce the cooldown of Thunderclap by 50%. Right here, let's see. Casting Avatar will give you 2 charges of Thunder Blast and reset the cooldown of Thunderclap. Okay, while not active, Lightning Strikes have a chance to grant you Avatar for 4 seconds. And then over here, every 10 rage we spend reduces the cooldown on Avatar and Shield Wall by 1 second. So Thunder Blast is a mechanic that we're getting from the Mountain Thane passive here. So what we want to do is we want to cast Avatar anytime that Thunderclap is on cooldown or Thunder Blast is on cooldown, and we don't have charges of Thunder Blast. So Thunder Blast can stack up to 2 times. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do Avatar, usable. We're going to do Aura player buff. This is going to be Thunder Blast. Okay. And we're going to do stat count is 0. Okay, so that way we get the 2 stacks. The other thing that we want here is, and this might change in practice, but we're going to say spell. Okay. Cooldown. On cooldown. Thunderclap. Okay, so if Thunderclap's on cooldown, we have 0 charges of Thunder Blast, cast Avatar. That should still happen a lot. If in testing in practice, we find that like Avatar is never triggering because either we have like 1 charge of Thunder Blast in the pocket, or we've got Thunderclap, but it's not on cooldown or something like that, then we can come in and tweak one of these. But I would prefer to get the full benefit of casting Avatar, which is a reset on the cooldown of Thunderclap plus 2 charges of Thunder Blast. So if we can set it up this way and it works relatively often, we're going to get the maximum benefit out of it, which is what I would like to do. We don't have Ravager, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that out of there. We don't have Thunderous Roar, so we're going to drop that out of there. Okay, that leaves us with these, right? So we have Shield Block, Execute, Thunderclap, Revenge, and Shield Slam. Shield Slam, we basically just want to hit it all the time. Pretty much if Shield Slam comes up, we want to hit Shield Slam. I would say the exception here might be if we have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast. Okay. So if we look at Shield Slam, Okay, increase damage, increase critical strike damage, chance to reset shield slam. Shield slam increases the damage of shield slam, increases the block value of your shield. Let's see. And then right here, shield slam deals 10% increased damage and reduces damage against you by 2 seconds. And then also we could get that big violent outburst. So this grants a stack of Seeing Red, which transforms 8 stacks to violent outburst, causing your next shield slam or thunderclap to deal 200% increased damage and generate more rage. I think we want to use that on thunderclap actually. And over here, shield slam damage increased. Right here, shield slam has a chance to grant you thunder blast, stacking up to 2 charges. And then right here, lightning strikes have a chance to make your next 2 shield slams have no cooldown. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna add in aura player buff. We're gonna do thunder blast. Stack count less than or equal to 1. Okay, meaning we can always potentially generate a charge of Thunder Blast with this. And then we're going to add Aura player buff. And we're going to do that Violent Outburst is missing, because I want to use that Violent Outburst on Thunderclap. Okay, so basically we're going to use Shield Slam all the time, but if we already have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast, then we're not going to cast it because we're going to cast Thunder Blast instead. And if we have Violent Outburst, we're going to use that on Thunder Blast as well. Okay, so we'll go with that. We'll see how it works. We might have to take something off. It may be that like we still want to cast Shield Slam because what if we do have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast, but Thunder Blast or Thunderclap here is on cooldown, so we can't actually use it? Then maybe we would want to, you know, add that in. We could actually add in and spell usable Thunderclap. Nah, that's getting too much into it. We'll test it and then see how it goes. Okay, the next thing that we want to use is Revenge. So we're going to look at what Revenge does in our kit. Okay, so right here, it can refund rage. Right here, it does increase damage, but costs more rage. And right here, if it hits 3 or more enemies, it hits them additional time for 30% damage. In this particular build, we want to prioritize Thunderclap more than we want to prioritize Revenge. Revenge still has a chance to reset the cooldown on Shield Slam. But I've opted out of most of the other Revenge buffs here. So Revenge is going to be in the priority line after Thunderclap. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to say if Revenge is usable, use it. And if Shield Slam is not usable, and we're going to say if Thunderclap is not usable. Okay, so basically, if we can't use Shield Slam and we can't use Thunderclap, then we're going to use Revenge. Right? And then we go to Thunderclap. Okay, so Thunderclap, we got a lot going on here with this one. Okay, so if we do Thunderclap. Okay, so first off, we got Thunderclap. The radius is increased over here. If it hits 3 or more enemies, it hits them in additional time. Down here, the damage is going to be boosted. The cooldown is going to be reduced. Over here, we can reset Shield Slam with it right here. This reduces the cooldown of Demoralizing Shout. And then down here, we can get that Mega Thunderstrike. Thunderclap. Then here, we can get the Lightning Strike. Right here, we can get the Thunder Blast. Right here, we can get, again, that Thunder Blast here, Thunderclap damage increased, and then we've got the boost from Avatar for Thunderclap. So looking at this, we actually want to Thunderclap when we have Thunder Blast as much as possible. We might need to tweak Revenge a little bit, but I think we just want to cast Thunderclap anytime it's available. and Shield Slam is not available, right? So let's go in here. Let's do Thunderclap usable. Okay, we can get rid of this. Thunderclap's usable. Shield Slam is not usable. Okay, so this one's going to be a little more complicated. So Shield Slam we're going to use when it's available and when we don't have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast. So we want to use Thunderclap when it's available, and Shield Slam's not available unless we have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast, right? So we're going to go player buff. We're going to go Thunder Blast. Stat count equals 2. Okay. So that's one scenario where we would use Thunderclap even if Shield Slam is available. We would use Thunderclap instead if we had 2 stacks of Thunder Blast, right? The other scenario where we would use this would be if we had Violent Outburst. I think those would be the scenarios. So then what we need to do is we need to come to here. We're going to copy this function. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to do custom function. So Thunderclap needs to be available, and either Shield Slam is not available, we have 2 stacks of Thunder Blast, or we have that buff. That should be correct. And then execute, we just want to use whenever it's available. I would say we still want to prioritize Thunder Blast. So I would say that execute is available. Actually, let's take a look at what execute does for us, if it does anything special here. Okay, so right here, nothing. Execute can strike with the lightning bolt. It can reset Shield Slam. Cost no rage. Yeah, I think we just want to use execute whenever available, and we don't have Thunder Blast. So we're going to say aura player buff name Thunder Blast, and then we're going to say stat count is less than 2. Okay, and then the last thing we have is shield block. I don't think we have anything special for shield block. Just that one thing we saw earlier, right? So right here, last stand grants you the shield block effect for its duration, right? So we don't want to cast shield block if we're about to do last stand. So if we come back into our WeakAuras, we would come take a look at our last stand. That triggers when our health is less than or equal to 40%. So I would say that we don't want to use shield block if our player info health, player health percent is less than or equal to 45%, and we have last stand available. So then we'll do spell. Okay. Action usable. Last stand. Okay. Otherwise, for shield block, raise your shield blocking all melee attacks against you for 6 seconds. These blocks can be critical blocks. Increase shield slam damage by 30% while active. I would say the other thing we would do here is we would do spell, charge count. We'll do shield block, charges, and we would just use this every time we have 2 charges. Okay. So then we got to add our custom thing here. So what we'll do is we will come over to our triggers, custom function. Okay, we want trigger 1. This time we want trigger 1 and trigger 2. Okay. And then we want and. Oh, we want trigger 1, trigger 2. Okay, so shield block needs to be usable, and we want to have 2 charges. But we also don't want to use it if these 2 are true. Okay, so custom function, we want trigger 1 and trigger 2. We always want those to be true. And then we want or trigger 3 and trigger 4, I think. Yeah, so just use it. Yeah, okay. I keep not hitting save. Okay, so what this is trigger 1 and trigger 2. So it's saying just use the ability in general, or I think that'll work. Let's go find out. Why is it telling me to use last stand? The heck? Oh, the health percent went away. Oh, I unchecked the box. Okay, that's my bad. Okay. Okay, I definitely messed some stuff up here, so we're gonna have to correct this. Because it's not telling me to use shield slam, which it should be telling me to do. All right, so this is where we get in and we just start testing stuff. All right, so shield slam, player buff, thunder blast. Okay, so it should be shield slam is usable and thunder blast stat count is less than 1. That's true. Let me check and make sure. Aura. It should be. Let's try always. And then player buff, violent outburst is missing. Okay. Let's try that again. See if we get shield slam. Yep. Okay. So we got shield slam. So that was the difference there. Okay. So we shield slam, thunder blast, shield slam. Revenge, because we can't do either. Shield slam, shield slam. It's not telling us to use execute. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let's clear some of these. So we go here, we use our demoralizing shout, we shield slam, we got a thunder blast, shield slam, revenge, shield slam, shield slam. Oh, it's telling us to shield slam again, revenge, shield slam, thunder blast, revenge, because we got nothing, revenge, shield slam, thunder blast, revenge, shield slam, revenge. We got the violent outburst. Ooh, so we had violent outbursts there, and we still shield slammed. Also, it's never telling us to execute. Okay. So let's get back in here real quick. So this should be violent outburst is missing. I saw it pop up. We might have to come back and address that one. I think thunderclap is working. Execute. So again, aura, thunder blast, stat count less than 2. Show on, let's do always. Again here. All right, let's try this. There we go. Shield Slam, Thunder Blast, Revenge, Revenge, Demoralizing Shout into Shield Blast, or Shield Slam, sorry. Shield Slam, Revenge, Shield Slam, Thunder Blast, Revenge, Shield Slam, Shield Slam, Revenge. We're not getting any execute procs. See, we have Violent Outburst right here. And it should be telling us to Thunderclap, right? So far, that's the main thing that I'm seeing here. I think we got the... I think we got the execute thing to work here. I just need it to proc again. Okay, so that's telling us to Shield Slam because we didn't have 2 stacks. That's correct. I'm not getting any of these execute procs to test it out and see if it works. All right. And also, we're not getting told to do our shield block at any point. So this is messed up too. Okay, so trigger 1 and trigger 2. Action usable, shield block. Charge count should be equal to 2. Show, okay, let's do show always. See if that makes a difference. Okay, there we go. Shield block. Yep, there goes execute. Okay, Thunder Blast, shield block, Revenge, execute, shield block, Thunder Blast, Revenge. There we go. I'm saying shield block, it's shield slam. Okay. That I think is pretty good. Pretty good. The thing to do now is to actually test it, right? Take it out and do it in some actual content. So we're gonna go run a delve. Not a big fan of fungal folly. So we're gonna go do the earth crawl mines. And this will basically, this is gonna conclude our video. We're gonna run the delve with the helper here. We're gonna see if we need to make any tweaks or anything like that. But this is basically how I go about putting together one of these WeakAuras helpers. And my intention again with this video is, I know it's a long video, but I really want you to have a reference for like how logically I try to put these things together and build them into WeakAuras. This is more about how do you put this together? How do you go about mapping out how this is going to be set up, and less about the technical WeakAuras application here. So we're going to do a tier 3. We're going to come in, we're going to have Bran on heals. Right now, I think I have him on Idol of the Earth Mother. So this could shield us from missing health if we need it. And then I've got him on the Streamline Relic, so we get some additional speed and some haste here. Okay. All right, so we'll do the delve. This is one I don't think I've done before. All right, so what do we got to do with this? Use the flamethrower to deal fire damage. Jumping will cancel any uses. Okay, so we just have like an extra ability here that we can use. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I haven't done this one, so this will be interesting. All right. I don't know why I have the sparkle here. That's got to be like an add-on issue or something. All right, so we're gonna pull these in. Demo shout. We're gonna throw up our shield block here. We're gonna start shield slamming. We're gonna get out of that because that is a fear. Revenge, revenge, shield slam, shield slam. This should be telling us to use our impending victory, and it's not. So we're gonna have to take a look at that. See why that wasn't happening. Okay, shield slam, thunder blast, execute. Okay, so the main thing that stood out to me right there was that it was not showing us, not telling us to use our impending victory. Okay, so it should be. All right, so let's just double check and make sure we don't have a weird like load condition on this. Load on spell known charge. That's weird. Oh, that's for the group. Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, that's weird for this not to work. Health of the target less than equal to 20%. It should be working. Or if our health is less than 75%. Return and yeah, it should be working. I don't know why it wasn't popping up there. All right, we're gonna go here and then jump over here. All right, so hit one of those. Get our defense up. Interrupt. Okay. So we did the little storm blast there. So this is telling us we could shockwave as well to interrupt. But, you know, again, like, I don't particularly like to do that. Interrupt. Okay. Thunderblast. Execute. There we go. Impending victory. Okay. I don't know what the deal with that was. All right. I need to get out of this stuff. Shield slam, shield slam, shield slam, pending victory. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Can't loot this thing now. That's a little irritating. I guess I could loot it and then just kill this intruder that's gonna pop up here. Or Bran will do it for me. That's fine. Okay, so I think that was okay. Oh, we got to clear the webbing with the flamethrower. Okay, gotcha. Like I said, I haven't done this particular version of the delve yet, so I'm more paying attention to what my WeakAuras are doing as opposed to what I'm supposed to be doing in the delve here. But yeah, that would make sense, you know, clearing out the webbing here. That, yeah, that probably would have helped. Okay, so then we can jump to cancel. And then we can come over here and speak with them. Oh man, this whole room is like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, what the heck's going on here? Okay, here we go. Got ourselves a little bit of a swarm here. So like on these guys here, I don't want to use demoralizing shout, you know, so I'm probably not going to. Yeah, whatever. We'll use it. Again, I want to follow what is up in front of me first, up at the top here. So like this is telling me shield wall, impending victory. All right, we're going to do that. We're going to slap here. We're going to thunder blast. That's going to give me another impending victory. Impending victory. All right, execute, impending victory. Execute, impending victory. Yep. So you can see how often like impending victory is popping up now because we are killing things. Like it's literally just like cast impending victory 1,000,000 times and keep your health topped off. All right, we're gonna do one of those. We're gonna do a thunder blast, interrupt, execute. Again, we could shockwave there if we want to. Like I said, I don't particularly like love that, but it is what it is. I'm assuming we could like flamethrower here, get rid of this webbing, right, and then get right back to it. Pending victory. There we go. Just got unlimited executes here. All right, and you can see like we're pretty much still topped off here in terms of HP. All right. All right, then we got some flying dudes here. Pull them in. Just let Bran finish them off. Get a nice little free heal there. All right, here we go. Here's the rest of them. Come on in. All right, do a demo shout. Get out of that fear. So we're feared. We're going to go ahead and use that. Okay. Pending victory. All right, shield wall. All right, bitter immunity. There we go. Thunder blast. Get out of that. Execute. Execute. Pending victory. Shields. There we go. Do another shield wall. Get out of that. So you don't get feared. All right, we should be getting a lot of impending victories here in just a second. All right, so we're going to impending victory here. We do have an elite. We're going to get out of that. We're going to get some of this webbing out of here if we can. All right, ignore pain. Here we go. Let's get back into the groove here. All right, we got this. Into that. Into last stand. Here we go. Ugh, so much. So like you still gotta situationally be like on top of things here, but there we go. I'm not gonna stand there, Bran. Chill out, bro. Chill out, man. All right, and if nothing else, that probably shows you how useful the rotation helper is. Yeah, just being able to get that going there. All right, we got to go rescue some lamplighters. I'm assuming that they're going to be up here. This is the normal progression for the delve. All right, give me 1 second. Okay. All right, we're just gonna hop over here to a place where there isn't any webbing. Go ahead and cast that. There we go. Revenge. Good blast. There we go. Yep. Alright. There's our flamethrower again here. Oh yeah, this is definitely where we're trying to rescue people here. I think we're actually gonna want to go in with this flamethrower right here. Get rid of some of this webbing up front. Alright. Alright, let's do it. Here we go. Demo shout. And slap that in. Hit some revenge. There we go. We'll pull more in. I don't care. The only things that are really annoying are those fear mongers in this thing. Okay, go ahead and do that. Okay. Shield wall. Okay. Gonna execute again. Take care of him. So this is an example where I'm gonna skip on demo shout right now because I don't want to use it on this one target. And that is why I show multiple things on here, because I don't want to use an ability that normally I would use. Okay, we can get him out with that. Good. I was wondering. Yeah, we might as well pull in the rest of them. All right, there we go. Let's get it started. Okay. Interesting that we're not getting a pummel on that. That's weird. But again, that's where that situational awareness comes from. Right, you still got to know what's going on in the game itself. We do have a fearmonger down there, so I'm not going to pull this whole group. Normally I probably would, but... Alright, so this is one where I want to target that fearmonger first. That is something we're going to want to be doing here. Oh, you can't interrupt that. Okay. Well, that's fun. Okay. Yeah, so I didn't realize you couldn't interrupt the fearmonger, so that's good to know. We've got 3 more to go. We got a web spinner over there. I don't know why we would go fight that guy, though. There's a fearmonger down there, so we're just going to work on this group here. I'm okay if we get that elite. That's fine. I don't know what all those are. Okay, webs, gotcha. That's fine. We can use our little flamethrower here real quick. There we go. I think that's a good spot to use a shockwave. Get that cooldown on there. All right, yeah, we want to stay focused on these guys that are not elite. Okay. All right, then we're gonna clear up these webs. Get out of here. Okay, pretty solid. Oh, something else we might want to do, by the way, is I forgot to tell you about loading in combat and having a valid target. That's something that maybe we'll cover in a different video. All right. So we know now that we cannot interrupt that fear. So we want to get out of it every time. Let it go off. Come back in. There we go. Yep. Let's do one of those, one of these, one of these, one of those. Right. Okay, cool. So we got rid of the dude, which was the important thing there. Okay. Got him. And then we'll come down. This will be the last guy, and then it should be the boss. So we'll get to see how this works on a boss. Oh, this is the one that pulls in all those crazy rail cars and stuff like that. So I'm gonna zoom out so I can see what's going on here. All right, there we go. Interrupt. Okay. Yep. Throw an execute out there. Do a little stormbolt interrupt on that. Do a little. Okay. All right, so we want to come over here. Make sure we don't get hit by the cart. Go and heal up. There we go. Okay, so we're not interrupting on the shockwave there the way that I hoped we would be. Okay. Shield wall again. Doing pretty okay here. We haven't had to use our other stuff yet. Okay, she's gonna pull from that direction, so we'll get out of the way. Charge back in. Interrupt. These. Nope. Execute. Yeah, see, the shockwave there isn't interrupting, which is interesting. All right, gonna pull from that direction. Charge back in. All right. Easy enough. We pretty much ended at our top health here. And we're still in combat with Bran's egg. All right, Bran, get your egg out of here. All right, there we go. All right, so that's the end of the delve there. I think overall, like, there's a couple things here or there. I noticed a couple like weird things happening, but for the most part, I thought that this is pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead, open these up, and we got a bag of gold. Open that up there. Over here, we got some Valor Stones, some Resonance Crystals, and I've got a key. I'm just gonna unlock this for the video. So we got a ring, 571 ring. Is that even like an upgrade for me? It's barely an upgrade. I probably shouldn't use that key, but you know, I wanted to use one in a video here, so it is what it is. All right. All right, and then we get out of our delve. We're ready to go. We had one or two kind of spicy moments right there, but for the most part, wasn't too bad. And again, that is kind of what goes into the rotation helper here. So the one thing that I did want to show you here is on the load. I usually do this on the group, but if you look at the load tab, you can load these in combat, out of combat, etc. I have the situational set to load all the time, and I have the rotational set to load all the time, but there are specific things that I want to only load in combat. So what you can do is you can go in and you can either make it like for this rotation in general, I want it to be in combat, but I want my shield charge to be available all the time. I want my charge to be available all the time. And then pretty much everything else in here, I only want to show up in combat, right? So then if we come over to situational, for this one, I want it to be able to load primarily in combat. But there's a couple things that I want to load out of combat, which in or out. So that would be my defensive stance and battle stance, and then also my battle shout. Right. So this should get rid of the thing where impending victory was showing up, even when I was out of combat. right? And the other thing that we can do here is for impending victory under the trigger, we could add like there must be a valid target, right? So if we do that in there, that should prevent it from telling us we can cast it on corpses, which we don't want. So, all right, and you can see right there, I need a battle shout. If I switch over, it should tell me go back to defensive stance. Back into defensive stance, and I'm good to go. So, like I said, really long video getting into how you set up these WeakAuras and what you do, but hopefully this can get you started, show you what goes into creating a rotation helper, right? So first it's getting your talent build together, getting familiar with what you're actually supposed to do when you play, and then it's basically just kind of setting up the WeakAuras to help you track the things you already know that you should be paying attention to, which in general just makes it a little bit easier, right? Instead of having to look down at your bar and be like, is WeakAuras on cooldown? Okay, let me look over here. Am I at 75% of my health? Like, it just kind of does it for you. So you've thought through all the logic and set it up yourself. It's just helping you to track 10 things at once, because it's difficult to track 10 things at once in the heat of combat, and it helps you stay focused on what's going on around you, as opposed to also having to look down here and calculate all these different bars and buffs and etc, etc. So that's mainly what I use it for, is to help me play the way I already know that I want to play, and I figured out that I want to play. So hopefully this long, insane video here has been helpful for some of you. Let me know in the comment section below. What questions do you have? What do you want to see next? Are you excited about these? Do you not care about these? You know, what class spec are you looking forward to? Just let me know what you think. What are your impressions of this video? If you liked it, throw a like on it, subscribe to the channel and help us grow, and share the video with a friend that you think might enjoy having a little WeakAuras assistance in their gameplay. As always, I appreciate you taking time to watch one of my videos, and I'll see you on the next one.